Thank you everyone for coming. I'm Jody Cavalier and I'm the interim co-chair of the Low-Residency MFA in Visual Studies program. And we are in week 4 of our 8-week intensive, which means we are about halfway through, which is crazy. I am super excited that we are bringing in Steve Locke to talk and share his practice with us today. Steve is from Boston, and it's his first time here in Portland, so it's been fun showing him around and spending time with the students and whatnot. But I'm going to hand it over to Richard Boswell, who's a first-year MFA student, who's going to give our formal introduction. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening. I'm Richard. I'm a first-year low-residency MFA in the visual studies, and it's my pleasure to introduce Steve Locke this evening as our visiting artist. Steve received his BS in 1984 from Boston University, a B.F.A in 1997, and an M.F.A in 2001 from the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. He attended the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in 2002. He has received grants from the Pollock-Krasner Foundation, the Louis Comfort Tiffany Foundation, the Art Matters Foundation, and the LEF Foundation Contemporary Work Fund grant. His solo exhibition, There Is No One Left to Blame, was curated by Helen Molesworth for the Institute of Contemporary Art. This show traveled to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit and was on view through July 2014 and coincided with the publication of the artist's first monograph by the same title. He is represented by Samsøñ in Boston. He has had solo exhibitions with Mendes Wood in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and a solo project at VOLTA 5 in Basel, Switzerland. He has been included in group shows in Boston, Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, Savannah, Seattle, Sao Paulo, and Beijing. His work has been reviewed in ARTFORUM, Art in America, Art New England, JUXTAPOZ, the Boston Globe, and the New Yorker. He writes the blog artandeverythingafter.com. Mr. Locke is an associate professor at Massachusetts College of Art and Design, and tomorrow's his birthday, so happy birthday.
Richard's in trouble, folks. Hi, everyone. Ooh, good, it's dark, so I can't see you, but you can kind of see me. Okay, this is great. There's a little thing down here that says, "You'll do great." So, in case you're really terrified, but it's very nice to be here. I want to say thank you, a special thank you to Jody and Laura for bringing me out, and to Jesse for looking after me the whole time I've been here. It's been really, really great. You have a wonderful program here. You're very fortunate. Spent the day at the Portland Art Museum, which is really gem, really quite terrific collection. And that's a great thing to be able to have access to while you're here. I timed this talk. It takes about an hour, maybe a little bit less. And if you fall asleep, that's fine. I won't be offended or anything. But try to wake up for the end, because the end is really good. So I just try to tell people that. So I am a painter. I think of myself as a painter, even though I make other things. Most everything I do is related to painting. This is a painting called The Never Ending Story. It's about 12 by 16 inches. It's acrylic and oil on wood panel. And this painting, so I like to start with this painting because it sort of encapsulates all the things that I've been interested in since I've been an artist. I always wanted to be one of those artists who could make geometric abstract paintings. I love those paintings. I love Bryce Martin. I saw Burgoyne Diller today at the museum. I love those paintings, could never make them. Figures always popped up in my pictures. And so this painting has the modernism in the back. You see the beautiful two monochromes touching, yeah. And the sea and the sky are sort of flipped, yeah. And then there's a white guy in the middle of all the modernism. And there's a black guy who kind of wants to be in the middle of the modernism, but the white guy is keeping him out. But if you could scroll down, if there was a bottom part to this picture, you would see that the way that they're standing, their genitals would be touching. So there's something about the romance of modernism and the romance of occupation that has interested me for my entire career. So these are pictures from the show, There Is No One Left to Blame. This is at the ICA in Boston. And what has occupied me for the most part in my career is the idea of portraiture, the history of portraiture, the history of painted people. Mostly, portraiture comes to us through this understanding of communication of state power. You have a picture of the king, so you know who the king is, and how that has become troubled over the years has always been of interest to me. This is 2005. This is the first solo exhibition I ever had. It's called When You're a Boy. It's the Artist Foundation in Boston, a small not-for-profit space. Kinds of spaces that really don't exist anymore. This sort of art for art's sake spaces that don't collect and depend upon grants for their survival. And with gentrification in Boston, this kind of space doesn't really exist anymore. But this was the Artist Foundation. This is When You're a Boy. This is every drawing that I made over the past 5 years, nailed to the wall of the gallery. That white plaster painted chair in front. So it's essentially recreating the bedroom I never had when I was a little kid. You know how when you're a little kid you put posters up of all the sorts of things that you're interested in? Well, the things I was interested in, there weren't any posters of them. So I had to make them, and then I recreated this room. And then, excuse me. In 2004, my mother passed away, and you're going to hear a little bit more about my mother. But I look like her, and so I started doing a lot of self-portraits to explore my genetic relationship with her. And I also was going to a lot of museums, because the great thing about museums is you can go into a museum and start crying and no one bothers you, because they think you're just overcome by the artwork, right? You know, you're like crying in front of Monet's haystacks or something. There's a museum in Massachusetts called the Peabody Essex Museum. It has a collection of Victorian miniature paintings, small oil paintings on ivory. And the people in the paintings are wearing all sorts of apparatuses to hold their bodies in place. They're wearing collar stays and corsets and all sorts of different things to hold their bodies in place. And so I was thinking of a contemporary object that you use to hold your body in place, and the only thing I could think of was a cock ring. So I took a cock ring and drew that circle, and then drew my portrait inside that circle. And so it's sort of like a small peep show. So, but when you're looking at the pictures and you're looking through the holes, instead of seeing me in the altogether, you see my head. And so it became this opportunity to do all these different kinds of performances in order to make the drawings. So I wore that ball gag, I shaved my head, I wore a hat, and some of them I thought, well, this is the one that will be on the money when I'm the emperor, you know, like those kinds of ideas, because they were sort of coin-sized. So, like Richard was saying, I went to Skowhegan in 2002, and I had nothing going on. Like, I just had this obsessive drawing practice a little bit that you saw in the image before, and I had a job working as a secretary, and they had a digital copier at this job. This is a long time ago, back when a digital copier was like a big deal, right? And they also had a bookbinding machine. So I would stay late at work, and I would start Xeroxing and making these little books of my drawings and sending them out through the mail anonymously. So these are the first two I did. And so essentially, it's a drawing on one page, and then another page is translucent with text on it. And as you flip through, this little narrative about these men unfolds. All the things are either quotes I overheard or things I was thinking in the moment. I don't know if you can read that. The people in hell want ice water. Yeah. And I would like, there used to be this thing called the phone book. I don't know if you guys know what that is because you're all young. They used to deliver it to your house. It was the white pages, and it had everybody's phone number and address in it. The whole neighborhood, right? So I would take the phone book and I would go 10 pages in and 10 names down, and I would mail that person a book. And this is the beginning of email as well, and my email address is on the last page so people could contact me if they wanted to. And I got emails like, why are you sending me this stuff? Please stop sending me these weird coloring books. And then some people said like, oh, these are great, please add me to your mailing list. And I was like, oh, I should probably get a mailing list together of people who actually want these things. And so over the course of my career, I felt like a success. Like I didn't have a gallery, I didn't have representation, I wasn't selling any work, but I could go to the post office once a week and send out these books, and I was a successful artist. Like my work was out there in the world, people were seeing it, people were responding to it. And I don't want to make it sound like I came up with this idea on my own. This goes back to 70s feminist practices to circumnavigate the gallery system. The work of Ida Appelberg figured really, really majorly in my decision to start working this way. So this was the next book I did. This is Palimpsest, and this is a larger book. The other books were 5.5 by 8.5. They're a half sheet of A4 paper, and this was a full sheet. And this was all on translucent pages, so as you flip through, the story advanced without text. So in 2002, there was a show at Roth Horowitz Gallery in New York called Lynching Photography, something called Lynching Photography. And essentially there are these extrajudicial killings, usually of African Americans, and a photographer would come and the killers would pose with the body, and they would take photographs and give them out as souvenirs and also send them through the mail as postcards. And in the early part of the 1900s, one of the few jobs African Americans could get was to be a mail carrier. So imagine you're seeing these images of people like you being killed that you have to deliver to someone's mailbox. So there's a coffee table book of these images, which I stole from the gallery because I really didn't feel like I should have to pay for it. And I started working with these images. So essentially what I did was I scanned these images into the computer, used Photoshop to sort of paint out the victims. So all you see are the perpetrators. So that sort of flash at the bottom that you see of the image is a person on fire. And all those people are posed behind them. And I sent them through the mail as postcards. Again, the same process, opening up the phone book, just people at random, sending them. William Brown is the person who was killed in this particular instance, 28 September 1919 in Omaha, Nebraska. They seem as if they have gathered about an ordinary fire. The thing that gets me the most is their vanity, their simple desire to be seen, to be recorded, to be known. I wonder if the little boy on the right had dreams about this night, and if he did, I wonder if Mr. William Brown was in them. Shoot me an email when you get this. And then my name, the shoot me, deflects the violence on the front of the card onto me. There are 5 cards in the series. This is 2 and 3. On the bottom card, you can sort of see on the left, you see someone's foot coming into the frame. There's a person hanging there. And this whole project is on my website, but we're going to come back to this when we get to the work at the end, because current circumstances have made it necessary for me to start to work with this kind of imagery again. This is the final card in the series. It's a quarter of the crowd. They're actually standing around the flaming corpse of Jesse Washington, who was lynched. So this is a picture of my mother. It's a studio photograph she had taken when she was younger. I think I was alive. So yeah, I remember her going to get this picture taken. My mom died of lung cancer, 2004. And I was brought up in this very strict Catholic tradition. And when someone dies, you send a mass card on the anniversary of their death. So this is the mass card I made for my mother. It says, I think that God made the artist to show people things that they need to see. That's what my mother said to me. We're in the Cleveland Museum of Art looking at an Anselm Kiefer together. And so I sent this card out to all my friends and all of her friends on the anniversary of her death. When my mother got sick, she got fired from her job because she was sick. She lost her job and she became pretty much indigent. She worked for this company for about 30 years. It's a company run by Catholic Charities. One of the missions of this particular company and this order of nuns that supported it was to help women who were single mothers. And because my mother had been there for such a long time, her salary was so much higher they fired her when she got sick, and then they hired someone else to do her job for less money. So the pure economics of it cost my mother her job, and to some extent it cost her her dignity in her life. So in addition to sending this card to all of my friends and all of my mother's friends, I send it to every person on the board of directors of the company my mother worked for. I send it to every nun that I can think of who's a member of that order. I send it to her surgeon. I send it to her doctor. I send it to her pulmonary oncologist. I send it to everyone who was involved in the loss of her. And I did this every year for 5 years, for the first 5 years, which is sort of the tradition. So this is the card I sent in year 2. This is the card I sent on the 5th anniversary. And the great thing about LinkedIn, like all that sort of annoying messages you get from LinkedIn, I follow all these people on LinkedIn. So they change jobs, they move to different places, and then 10 years later they get a card with this woman on it. So it's a way of constantly accusing people. And this is the one I sent on 10 years. And so 2019 will be 15 years, so I'll be sending one then. So I'm a studio artist. The only thing I know how to do to deal with anything is to make something. I'm not someone who thinks about things I want to make. I just make them, and then I think about them after I make them. And when my mother was ill, I was in the studio. She was in Michigan, I was in Massachusetts. I'd fly back and forth to take care of her. And I would draw her in her hospital room. And based on those drawings, I started making these paintings that are based on her profile. This is 48 by 96 inches across. It's painted in 1-inch squares. And it's all portraits, it's all pictures of my mom's head in profile. So this one's 24 inches square. They're painted on the back with this sort of fluorescent orange paint, so they're framed in an orange glow. And they're painted 1 square at a time along the warp and the weft like fabric. So I paint all the verticals. So I paint a vertical line, and then I'll change the color subtly, and then I'll paint the next column, change the color, go all the way across. And these paintings have become important because they have become the basis for my newer work. They actually become the platforms that my newer work rests upon. So sort of building on my own history to make a new history. And some of the heads face in different directions. Sometimes they're screaming, sometimes they're wearing glasses. But they've all been distilled almost down to like a character or like a letter form. And the color mixing is, the colors mix optically. There's not fluorescent paint or metallic paint used or anything. It's just oil paint. It's the work of a crazy person. Like, this is what grief does to you. You're alone in a room with 2 palette knives and a jar of cold wax medium mixing a color for 16 hours a day. That's what I had to do in order to deal. So I went to Savannah, Georgia. This is a funny story. I went to Savannah, Georgia, and they asked me to do a project there, and I did this printmaking project called Rapture. Around this time, there was a lot of conservative, highly conservative, bigoted religious people getting busted having gay sex. This was around this time this was happening. So let me back up a little bit. This was one of the first mail art projects I did. I got this pamphlet on the street. I was walking down the street and someone handed me this pamphlet, and I wasn't doing anything particularly homosexual at that moment. I was just like walking down the street, right? And this guy just hands me this pamphlet. And of course it says, is it really, well, I don't have to tell you what's inside the pamphlet. It's not natural, it is sinful, and it is curable if you believe in Jesus, right? So the church's address is in this pamphlet. So I took the pamphlet home, and I made a couple of drawings on the inside of the pamphlet, and I took it to a copy center and had 500 of them made, and I mailed them back to the church. So this is what you see when the pamphlet is closed, and this is what you see when the pamphlet is open. So it's just sort of wanted to explain, if we're really going to talk about it, let's talk about what we're actually talking about, what to avoid, right? And I wanted to make it look as appealing as possible for anyone in the congregation who may want to pursue, yeah. So the rapture in some religious cosmologies is when all the faithful, 144,000 of them, you know, the sort of 12 tribes of Israel, the 12, so some sort of weird multiple, those people are going to be snatched up into heaven bodily. So planes are going to crash, cars are going to crash, like people are going to be, you're going to be in the supermarket and someone will be holding a bottle of milk and they'll be raptured and there'll just be a pile of clothes and the milk will fall on the floor, right? So I started to imagine what that would look like, what that would actually look like with a lot of these people who I had been thinking about. So this is the first drawing I did. This one's called The Evangelist. And then there's the team captain, the delivery man. So there's 12 of them, one for each disciple, and they're titled by their function, just like Duchamp's bachelors are titled by their function, like the flunky, the chauffeur, the baker, you know. These are the twins, because they're the same, but one of them is different. Yeah. And then I made these into 22 by 30-inch lithographs. And I did this in Savannah, Georgia, with a group of students as part of a master class in lithography. And we had long conversations about religion, about violence against gay people, and about sexuality and all these sorts of things. And it was really edifying, and it was really, really great until the show got canceled. And my dear colleague, Avantika Bauer, who is probably one of the best artists I know, she was there at that time, and it was a very difficult moment for all of us involved. But the curator of the show went to bat for the work. And so the show stayed open, but they told us we had to move the work to another room where it couldn't be seen in public. So I moved it to the conference room. So this is their conference room. So it's a rapture is sort of surrounding them, you know. And it's reflected in the table and all that sort of stuff. So I had to take the picture down when I was on the phone. I was like, okay, good, I've done my work here. So the original plan for Rapture was to present it like this, to have the wall painted black, to have the 13 panels, and have a small video playing on the inside. And I think that this video is going to play when I go to the next slide. So it's a short video, it's about 5 minutes long.
But the Bible said, verse 6 said, Lot went out at the door unto them and shut the door after him. And the Bible said, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. So what type? This is not normal. This is so wicked. Why do you want to sleep with, you don't even know that they're angels. They may look beautiful, but they're angels and they're men. Why do you want to do so wickedly? Like they was going to listen to Lot. Verse 8, behold, now I have two daughters, which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as it is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. Oh, how compromising Lot. It reminds me of some of you leaders, or some of you church members. You're full of compromising. Our dear Lot wanted to give his daughters to these perverts. Don't he know if these perverts did not want a woman? They want a man, but he wants to compromise his own daughters. These guys might be full of disease, but he wants to compromise his own daughters. Because Lot been living in a compromising state. He could have got out of Sodom and Gomorrah, but that's where he chose to stay. And you see, you can get out of homosexuality. You just choose to stay that way. Don't tell me this baloney that you was born like that. Well, I was born, well, if you was born homosexual, okay, she said, when I was born a thief. Well, they are jailed for thief. I was born a murderer. They are jailed for murdering. If you was born a homosexual, well, they are held for homosexual if you don't change your ways. Unrighteousness cannot inherit the kingdom of God. The Bible said God desires for you to be saved. You must repent of your sin, acknowledge that it is wrong, and turn to a loving God that loves you.
That's Boston Cable Access Television. To Basel, Switzerland, to participate in VOLTA, one of the art fairs there. This is a piece called The Boy With The Thorn in His Side. Essentially, it's about 350 drawings that are nailed to the wall with copper finish nails. And at that same fair, I had a project in the elevator. This neon sign was installed in the elevator, and it flashed these messages in 4-second intervals. So you go down the elevator, and you'd see, and those drawings are actually in the elevator, and they would, the blue drawing, the pink drawings would show up when the blue light was on, and the blue drawings would show up when the pink light was on. Okay. So when I was working at Skowhegan in 2004, my friend Robert came to my studio, and he was wearing this ridiculous pink jacket that he got from a thrift store, and I was painting him, and he like sort of stuck out his tongue momentarily. I was like, wait, stop right there, stop right there, stop right there. And so I made this painting of him. It's hanging in my bedroom now, and I thought, that's really hilarious, and it's really kind of vulgar, and it's really kind of sexy, and it kind of makes him look a little vulnerable and unimportant. And I was off and running, because I had finally figured out a way to investigate portraiture without lionizing my subject. I could paint my subject with a little bit of humility and a little bit of pathos without having to resort to tropes of nudity or infantilizing them or feminizing them or any of things like that. So this is at Samsøñ, a gallery in Boston, represents my work. This is a show called You Don't Deserve Me. And was the first time I started making paintings that were autonomous from the wall. The history of painting is really the history of signage, you know? You see a sign on the street, and so I started adopting the methods of sign presentation as ways of putting painted information in the world. So this painting is on our Turkish prayer rug. The rug faces Mecca because it's not a gesture towards painting. It actually is a rug. It has a function. So I didn't want to change the function of the rug. But I did want to make sure no one stepped on the rug, so I sort of painted this Keep Off the Grass sign. It's in the exact same orientation as a Keep Off the Grass sign, but it's on the rug. Someone came to the show and like brought their dog to the and like the dog got on the rug, and I'm like, I'm not a religious person by any stretch of the imagination, but I was so deeply offended that they let their dog get on a prayer rug. I was like, but I love dogs. I do, I love dogs. So this is in the same orientation as a music stand, for example. It's called Empire because of that Empire wallpaper that's on the base there. And you can see the base of the painting is one of those paintings that I showed you earlier that I was painting after my mother passed away. So then these paintings started to become the basis for the other work. And this is a neon that I had installed in the window of the gallery. I wanted people to look into the gallery and see the show framed through this sort of a melancholy remembrance of Peter Jennings. Do you know who Peter Jennings was? Okay, good, okay. Right. So this is in Detroit. This is There's No One Left to Blame. The Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit is an old auto dealership, and so that sort of industrial look was a perfect marriage to the work. I felt, and in both exhibitions, I built out the wall, and I cut into the wall, set paintings into the wall, because usually you think of the gallery as empty and you're going to fill it with something, but I wanted to sort of test this notion of the gallery space as a neutral space. It's not neutral. You can cut into it like a cake, and things go into it and things come out of it, but we never really question the realness of it. And I was trying to question it by pushing into it and pulling out of it. And then, in fact, just sort of making sort of pedestals for the work itself. So if you're asleep now, this is the part where you should wake up, because this is the part where it gets really good. This is a brief history. That little figurine. That's abstraction, okay? Like in America, like that's abstract art. Like you can't look at that black thing and think it has some reference to a human. Like that's abstraction, you know? And that's why I started to collect and use those things in my work, because I want to talk about abstraction, but talk about it because form actually has meaning. Form isn't just this thing that is floating around in the world for contemplation. It actually has meaning. And these two paintings are usually installed together like this, as if they're having a small conversation. It's far enough outside. There are copper finish nails driven in around the edge of the painting. That's going to become important a little bit later when you see the newer work. And the paintings are dated from when I started them to when I finished them. And it has taken me progressively longer and longer and longer to finish paintings. I don't know what that's about. I mean, it has taken me less and less time to finish paintings. That's what I meant to say. And I'm either getting older, or I'm just getting better at painting or something, or maybe I just don't care, or I don't know what it is. But one of these paintings I painted on for like 11 years. I was like, why am I painting on this painting for so long? It's such a long time. Yeah. And this painting has a companion called The Letting Go that was one of the largest paintings I made, but there wasn't room for the other painting in the show. Then I had this Neon Maid. There's No One Left to Blame. That's the title of the show. It's also the title of one of the works in the show. I also had it fabricated and put it on the side of the building. So it became the I'm sorry? It became the museum of There's No One Left to Blame. Yeah. So I have this dilemma of being an artist in the world right now, especially being an African American artist, being a gay artist, where there's been so much violence directed at gay people and black people, in not so much the historical past, but in the very recent past. And I went on sabbatical from my job. I got tenure, which was it was a miracle. Believe me, it was a miracle that I got tenure. And people kept asking me, well, what are you doing on your sabbatical? What are you doing on your sabbatical? And, you know, Michael Brown was killed at the beginning of my sabbatical. So that was on my mind, and I couldn't understand why it wasn't on other people's minds when they kept asking me about it. So I was in my studio and I made these watercolors, and I wanted to do a mail art project. And so I made a bunch of watercolors, and I put a post on social media, because there's no phone books anymore. And I told people, if you send me an email, or if you call me or send me a text message and send me $50, I'll mail you a watercolor. I don't care who you are, where you're seeing this message. If you get in touch with me, send me an email with this subject line that says watercolor, send me $50 and I'll mail you a watercolor. And so I did this, just probably about 200 of them that just went out into the world. And they're 5 by 7 inches, they fit in an envelope. And like I said, I felt very successful. Every time I went to the mailbox, I was like, I'm a successful artist. Just drop a bunch of things in the mail. It's a great feeling. Yeah. The watercolors led to a show in Hudson Opera House in Hudson, New York. And these are watercolors in artist frames. I designed and repainted and restructured all the frames, put the watercolors in, and installed them in this late 1800s opera house on the reception area. And there's some freestanding paintings that are included in the exhibition as well. Okay. So, like I said, Michael Brown was murdered at the beginning of my sabbatical, and I started really thinking about that. And it kept happening. Like Akai Gurley, it just kept happening. Renisha McBride, all these people kept getting murdered by police. And so I started thinking about our relationship to African Americans in this country. And the relationship that that this country has to African Americans is violence. And it's violence in service to a domestic identity, right? So I started making these domestic objects and photographing them. So these are the first photographs I ever made. And I was at one of the, like a Hallmark store, you know, the store where they sell like cards and like decorative frames and stuff like that. And I saw this picture frame that says "Our Honeymoon" with the little sandals. And I thought, I know exactly the picture that's supposed to go in that frame. So I bought the frame, and I found the picture, set it up. That's an Andre Booth 1960s Lane Furniture Company coffee table. The perfect sort of modernist object that all good, hardworking Americans would have in a stylishly appointed home. And I started photographing these frames on them. So I bought a whole collection of frames, and I returned to the imagery that was in the lynching photography. And this time I didn't take the victims out because I wanted to show these images in their domestic setting. So there are 4 different colors in family pictures. The yellow might be the kitchen. The blue might be the den or the dining room, I think. No, the blue would be the living room, and the red would be the dining room, and then the green would be like Dad's den. Yeah, so those sort of domestic color choices. So that frame says, "I can't believe we did that." And this image is reproduced in all 4 colors. This one says, "Mother, because of you, my world is a better place." It's not where you go or what you do, it's who is beside you that counts. So, in addition to that project, which I worked on, I also worked on a research project. I came back from sabbatical, and my colleagues, we have a biannual faculty show with everyone who's been on sabbatical and new faculty all show work. And I wasn't going to show anything, but this sort of thing happened to me with the police, where I got stopped by the police in my own neighborhood and held at gunpoint, and all this sort of stuff happened. And so I thought, I'm going to make a piece. I'm actually going to do it. So this piece is installed at the galleries at Massachusetts College of Art and Design. The neon says "A Dream." It's in blue neon. It's the same color as a police light. And on the wall are the 262 people who were killed by police or who died in police custody while I was on sabbatical. So the title of the piece is "A Partial List of Unarmed African Americans who died in police who were killed by police or who died in police custody during my sabbatical from Massachusetts College of Art and Design, 2014-2015. There are 262 names. And it's basic information. It's the date, the name of the person, their gender, their age, the city and state, and the method in which they were killed. And most of them, you see, there's Akai Gurley on November 20th, and then on November 22nd, Tamir Rice. So some of the names you recognize because they were hashtags, so they've been talked about on the news. But some of them, there's 262 people, and and that was the piece I decided to return to work with. Yeah. So. This is a sort of kitsch fawn, head of a fawn. I was in an antique store in Massachusetts, and the guy in the store goes, "Hey, dude, this thing kind of looks like you, right?" And I was like, "Oh, well, really, it does look like me. That's kind of creepy." So I bought it, and it was in my house for a while, and I moved to a new house, and I was thinking, how am I going to put myself in the work? And I was thinking about self-portraiture again. But instead of that, I decided I would work on this this project and use this piece as my doppelganger. So I made a mold of him and started casting him in hydrocal, which is a really great fine plaster, picks up every detail. And then I started casting him and adding color and pigment to the wet plaster, so it would set and the color would be fugitive, but it would also be incredibly vibrant for a time. And then I started figuring out ways to present it. There are copper finished nails driven into the eyes of that figure. This was, I was nominated for a grant in Boston, and we had to bring the actual work and install it. So it was really, I knew I wasn't going to get the grant. I knew. Like when I saw the other work that was going up on the walls, I was like, I'm not going to get this, you know. Like really beautiful landscape paintings and like incredibly realistic figure, I'm not going to get this, right? But it was great because I got to see the work up in a white cube and experiment with some things in terms of hanging and presentation. So that's the newest piece that's in my studio. This is called Occupied Japan. That little figurine on top. After World War II, when the Allies occupied Japan, when they got the porcelain works up and running again, some of the first things they made were these little racist figurines for the American market. So it's like a little black baby sitting on a toilet. It's an ashtray. So the cigarette butts are supposed to be baby shit. And on the bottom of the figure, it says Occupied Japan. Thank you very much. So I told you the end was good, didn't I? See? So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'll answer personal questions or anything you want to ask me. I'm happy. I'll do the best I can to answer. Really, just ask me. Ask me. Go ahead. Yes.
I see this relationship to, you mentioned subtly your Catholic upbringing, and some of the pieces that are standing upright that they're speaking to like altars and then the kind of other objects that you find in the world that come back into the studio. Can you talk about if you feel like there's a connection there, you see a connection, or that upbringing kind of cross into that?
I can't say it's unconscious because I don't know what's unconscious. You know what I mean? Like classic Freudian. Like I don't know if it's unconscious or not. I think that I'm deeply steeped in art history, deeply steeped in Catholic art, which is like the first art that you learn about, these sort of the pre-Reformation images. And I also spent a lot of time in church, so kneelers and like the confession booth and all those sorts of things, where the architecture of the space forces you to kneel. You know what I mean? Where you have to get on your knees in order to consume something or to read something. So I'm hugely influenced by that. But mostly I think about the way that a painting can alter the relationship of your body to it. Like when you see a keep off the grass sign, you automatically turn your body a certain way to deal with it. Or when you're driving and you see a stop sign, or when that little stop sign comes off the side of the school bus. Like I'm really interested in those moments of like color and signage. And so it definitely has its basis in the pageantry of the Mass, absolutely. Like we had liturgical dance in my church when it was so cheesy. It was so bad. It was so bad. I'm old enough to remember like the folk Mass. Like where there'd be like a nun with a guitar, you know, we are only one river, you know, like that sort of thing. Like I lived through that. And so all that sort of stuff is imprinted on my psyche. It comes out in different ways, but mostly a lot of it has to do with signage. Yes.
So this question is kind of muddy and not beautifully articulated, but my name's Megan. I'm a second-year Low-Res student.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. Also from Basel. I wanted to know, especially in light of current political things, especially with Alton Sterling and how political your work is, I'm curious what voice you feel you assert in the political conversation for justice. If that's something you're commenting on, if that's something you want to have a vocal presence in, and anything else you might find relevant.
I think the hardest job is to bear witness to her time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just bearing witness to my time. I think if I lived in a different time, I'd be making different work. If I had a different subjectivity, I'd be making different work. I think that to walk around in the world and not notice what's happening is obscene. And like, the privilege to do that or not do that doesn't extend to me. I was saying to Jody when I landed, I gave this talk about a week ago at Vermont Studio Center, and someone was saying to me how my work was, this whole notion that I should be hopeful, like that my work should be positive, or it should provide hope for people. And it's like, I'm not a gesture and I'm not an entertainer, I'm a visual artist. And I think the hard thing that people realize is that, the hard thing for people to realize is that, I'll tell you this story. Toni Morrison, beloved, someone said to her, "Oh, this is such a hard book to read." She said, "Imagine what it was like to write it." Like, this is the story. I wish I had a different story. I don't. This is the story I have. But the thing about politics, right? Doris Salcedo says it's all political. All of it. Mary Cassatt painting the mother and child, all the way back to like the caves of Lascaux, it's all political. All of it. The difference is that some people's political consciousness is accepted as normalized. And other people, like, I'm not making art about myself, I'm making art. I'm not making black people's art, I'm making art. But somehow in this culture, black people make black art, women make women's art, gay people make gay art, and white men make art. And it's problematic. It's problematic, you know. Like, my work is beautiful. I'll put my work up against anybody's. Like, I'll put my work up against an Ellsworth Kelly, I'll put my work up against anyone. It's beautiful. Because that's the drive of being a creative person. But this notion that the Ellsworth Kellys aren't political, or that the Donald Judds aren't political, think about what's happening when Donald Judd is making shiny metal boxes. Vietnam? It's about retrenchment. It's about a divorce. Like, we're not going to talk about content, we're going to hide here in pure form. You know, and it's not an accident that work looks like a military bunker. It's not an accident. Oh, it's a specific form. No, stop doing that. Stop it. That's why Ava Hess comes along and destroys all that nonsense. She just destroys it all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Hi, Richard.
In your piece that you did in Savannah, you were essentially being censored. Have you experienced censorship anyplace else at any other time?
For my artwork?
Yeah.
No.
So do you think that was specifically driven by
School.
It's the school. I mean, it's the school, and it's the, like, originally Rapture was supposed to be a book that I was going to mail out to people in Savannah. And my lawyer was like, no, not in Savannah. You can't do that there. You know? So, but you know, David Wojnarowicz's piece got censored like 3 years ago. So like, it's not over. Like, it's not like anybody likes gay people any more than they did back in 1930. Like, they hate them, you know, and they hate everything about them except the entertaining qualities that they see on television. So, I mean, there's a way in which that kind of subjectivity is still repressed. And you know, I'm gonna be 53 tomorrow. Like, it's bad. I'm telling you, it's just bad. Like, the way women are treated, the way gay people are treated, the way people of color are treated, the whole rhetoric that's around it, the stuff that people say, like, whether you like the Democratic nominee for president or not, the shit that people say, like, I have a sister. Like, don't say that shit to me. I have a sister. Like that, but that's the sort of discourse that we're in. And then we treat men like these like sort of idiotic Fred Flintstone characters who are incapable of affection, incapable of nurturing, incapable of thinking for themselves. And so men end up put in this ridiculous box where they don't have an emotional life. Like sexism it's a prison for everybody. It's a prison. Like there are men who can't hold their children. Like that's sexism. That's a problem. And like it's worse now than it's ever been in any period of my life. So I don't know if art can change that. In fact, I don't think art can change that at all. I'm not making my work in order to change circumstances. I think that's foolish. If I want to change circumstances, I become a social worker. I become a doctor, I become a lawyer, I become a human rights activist. I do all sorts of other things. But this whole notion of the artist as someone who provides social services for people is completely crazy. If you want to provide social services, become a social worker. That's hard. It's hard to do that. It's not that hard to be an artist. You know, you have to get training, you have to learn how to draw, you have to do all that sort of stuff. But like the notion of having to take a class in ethics to be a social worker, that's hard. Like how to intervene with other people's lives. So these things are not, and I know like in the academy right now, social practice is a big deal. I know that it's like a big thing. Was never down with it. Never, couldn't do it. Couldn't do it because people don't need art, people need to be fed. People need schools, they need housing, they need drug treatment facilities, they need education. They don't need art. They want art, they don't need it. It's a difference. Sorry if there's any social practice artists. You can go up there. You can tell me I have my head up my ass, it's completely fine. Go right ahead.
Well, I'm a painter, and I graduated last year from Low-Res, and I never really thought about social practice being something like storytelling and interviewing artists and basically hanging out and exchanging ideas. And it was pointed out to me by my mentor that was in fact a variation of social practice. And I came to realize that that is actually part of what I do as an artist. I hang out with other artists and I exchange ideas and share stories and collect stories, and I don't have any good answers, but I certainly am starting to have a lot more questions about what's going on in the world, and educating myself and sharing what I know with others so that we can all get over ourselves and each other and our fears and hesitations of what's going on. And I think that what I learned from my painting is that I have lots of failure, continue to do that with feeling satisfied with my work, but it did kind of open my heart up to looking at the world in a larger way and meeting people like you and, you know, learning more about how people feel about what's going on around them. And you're right, I do agree with you that you can't fix all these problems, and it is a different line of work, but at least I feel that there's something to be gained with this sense of storytelling and sharing that elevates our understanding of each other.
I would never argue against the human connection. I would never argue against that. But that's not the sole purview of art. Yeah. You know, I think that when we talk about what art is, when we talk about the commitment to craft and developing a vision and the creation of objects, and I've talked to people about, in studio visits, about the creation of charismatic space through the manipulation of material. Like, I'm much more interested in that. Like, I can have lots of conversations with people. Like, I've had lots of conversations with people. And, you know, having a conversation with a racist doesn't stop them from being a racist. It just doesn't. Like, there's all sorts of studies that have been debunked about, oh, have a 10-minute conversation with someone. Let someone know who you really are, and that will change their... No, it doesn't work. It just, if that worked, we'd be living in a paradise. It just doesn't work. So the question becomes, like, what am I going to do about power? What's my relationship to power? Am I going to embrace a relationship to power? Am I going to create myself as a subject? or am I going to consume and be passive and allow my society to structure my thinking about what is valuable or whatever? Am I going to have conversations with people who are like me? Am I going to build a community of people like me? Or am I going to reach out to people who are not like me? And if there are people who are not like me, do I welcome them? Or do I try to change them in order to make them feel comfortable for me? That's really that's what power does. You know, someone said the gentleman who was just murdered in Louisiana, if he hadn't resisted. Like, there's this way that people talk about these things, and if you're a woman or a person of color, or like a man who has a relationship with a woman that you care about, or if you're a man who has a child that you care about, and you hear people say these things, it doesn't take a huge leap of logic to develop compassion. Like, there's no additional conversation required to develop human compassion, right? So, like I said, I don't think that those things are the purview of art. I think that they're the purview of our human connection with each other. And the fact of the matter is that some people get to be human and other people get to be objects. And even the people who are like sort of grouped into the superior group of people, they didn't choose to be that way. They didn't choose to be in a dominant culture. They didn't choose it. But it's almost impossible to divest yourself of it. It's almost impossible to divest yourself of privilege, right? So you have to use it. I'm a man. I have lots of privilege. Lots and lots of it. Tons of it. I park my car. I don't think about where I park my car. Never think about it. Never think about it. Haven't thought about being raped at all today. I've been up since 5 a.m. and I have not once thought about being raped. Not once. So like, I didn't do shit to deserve that. That's privilege. I didn't do anything to deserve that. But I'm the person who, because I have privilege, I'm the person who has to speak out against that. I'm the person who has to put on an orange vest and walk women into reproductive services clinics. I'm the person who has to do that. That's not art. That's like the pursuit of a constant, evolving human connection. Go ahead, Beck.
Thanks particularly for that last comment. I have a question about your process of making and particularly finishing work. You spoke about paintings that have a long range of time to work on them, up to maybe 10 years, and how you started working more quickly, and also you branched out into using neon or text or the new sculptural work. Can you talk about the process of deciding that a work is finished, or if the work actually becomes finished?
That's a really good question. I think that there's, what's your name?
Anya?
Anya, there's two kinds of artists, I think. I think that there's artists who know exactly what the work is going to look like before they make it. It comes to them fully formed, and then their work through craft and expression and stuff like that to get it to match the images in their head. And I think that some artists work through recognition, that they're working on something, and then they say, like, wait a minute, that's my work. And that's when I know it's finished. Like when I recognize it as my own work, and it starts doing to me what it would do to any other viewer. When I stop looking at it in terms of making it, and then it's acting on me in this way that it's the only way I can describe it. Like I'm the viewer all of a sudden. I'm like, well, that's a good painting. You know what I mean? I have that moment, you know, like, and so that's when I know that I should stop. And I have paintings on the wall of my studio all the time, like in different states of being finished, and they mock me, like, you can't finish me, you suck, you'll never get this right, like all this sort of stuff, right? And I live with that, and I look at them, I photograph them, I look at them when I get home, I turn them upside down, I just live with them. Like I live with this one painting, it's 12 by 12 inches, lived with it for like 10 years, and I could not finish it. And then, like, you know, my life happened. Like I fell in love, I fell out of love, all these different things happened, and then I had enough information where I could finish the painting. So it's the painting, I was saying this to Kumja, the painting is a lived experience. The painting is an image, but it bears all the time that you touched it. So you think about someone like Sasetta painting the Virgin with egg tempera. like touching her face over and over again. It's this sort of weird act of devotion that's going on. It's the same thing with me. But I have the opportunity that I get to live with the paintings in various states of finish. And you know, I have to say, there's something really liberating, because I paint on panel, of taking a sander to a painting. There's something really like, that's not true anymore. And then coming back and then having a little bit of the history of the painting to inform you as you go forward. But I heard Dana Schutz talk about it, and she said it's like a coffee maker. It's like a self-regulating device. That's how you know it's finished. Like the coffee maker stops, that's how you know it's finished, right? Yeah. In the back there.
Tell us a little bit about the gap between the title of your artwork and the artwork. I experienced it as in a strange way. I feel that you address those that tenaciously resist, recalcitrance, I believe is the English word.
Right.
And those that reluctantly accept, acquiescence.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, very much so. I think about language as fugitive, you know what I mean? Because it's contextual, like everything. So these little fragments of language that stick in my head, I write them down, and then they actually end up getting married to paintings. And so it's less about making a title. You're absolutely right. It's like a sort of a refusal to title them, but it's allowing these little bits of language to get stuck to as a label for these things that I make that sort of suggest something that's happening in the middle of a sentence. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like "there's no one left to blame" is a complete sentence, but that could also be a fragment of a larger thought that just sort of occurs to you. Yeah. Yeah, you could complain about that, but there's really no one left to blame for your own behavior. You know, and then you could rephrase that, you could use that same phrase in a completely other way of talking about a situation. Yeah.
One more question.
Miss Bala there.
So, in your, I think it was No One Left to Blame, the show at Samsøñ where the paintings are treated as objects.
You don't deserve it.
You don't deserve me, sorry. You talk about the altar, the carpet, and different ways, and the color schemes, the very modernist kind of color fields. I'm curious about some of the other hardware, the galvanized pipes, the grain pipes. There's like something very macho about it.
Yeah.
But can you, is that it? Or is
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's like the internal plumbing, and I'm getting to the age where my internal plumbing doesn't work. So it's a plumbing that, not to be completely vulgar, but like a dick that never goes soft, like that sort of idea of the strength of holding something up. Yeah. And then there's like the modernist Bill Bollinger, who was a hugely influential artist for me, like the everyday notions of sculpture. And also like living in New England, where those pipes are ubiquitous. They're like coming out of the wall, like what the hell does that pipe go to? It just comes out of the wall and it's in your house. And so that became like a really interesting thing for me. But it really is like part of this macho Robert Morris sort of notes on sculpture sort of thing. And even the way that they're prepared, they're stripped, they're greased, they're all these different things that talk about all these sort of sexual things. And they are conduits. So like this notion of like there's something in the bottom of the painting that's coming up through this pipe and making a head. And they're clearly hollow. So all that sort of poetics is there. I tried using wood, but wood was just, it had too much of a precious sort of language that was being brought to the work, and I wanted a more aggressive language that was brought to it. And the steel, like just going to Home Depot and buying all that steel, was just like, it became like a thing. Like I'm like a guy at Home Depot, like there's like me, like, you know, like my purple Izod, like going like you know, it was just I really liked that sort of tension there. Right. I really did for the first time in my life. I felt like a complete spy too. So, yeah. I didn't wear cargo shorts though. Sorry if anyone's wearing those. Don't wear those, okay? Like guys, like don't like straight women put up with a lot. they shouldn't have to put up with the cargo shorts, okay? Just go to Banana Republic. They have some nice shorts, just above the knee. Like, why do you have the cargo shorts? Like, do you have like an Xbox controller and like a Hot Pocket in the other? Like, just don't. Just don't. If you like this girl, just don't wear the cargo shorts. Just my advice to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Steve. I just have a little bit of announcements. Please join us again next Wednesday for our visiting artist, Joanna Powell. And our students are doing some amazing things for First Thursday, so I just wanted to give a shout out. If you're around for First Thursday, Jennifer Uraukis is doing a project called Untitled Bodies, which is performative, and it's starting here at PNCA at 6, and it's going to roam around a little bit. Brittany Gibson, After Destiny 2, she's going to be at the Portland Pathophysical Society, which is just down the street at Everett Station Lots. And Christina Smiros has at saveas.psd at the Holt Gallery upstairs. So good job, all of you guys, having shows at the same time on First Thursday. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Steve.